Mummy is fundamentally about this memory, about this concept of memory and how memory forms for the mummy. Um, and because of that, the antagonists are also reflections of that memory. You've got daydreams and misremembered facts, forgotten knowledge, believed lies, and falsified data. That is something that is quintessential to how Mummy operates in the world. And because each foe in Mummy is hungry for life, that memory plays out, and that memory um, messes around with these facts. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at how you can use these antagonists in your games, um, with specifically looking at some of key these key ones that form the basis of what it is to be an Arisen and what it is to be a foe of the Arisen. Um, these are taken straight from Chapter 5, Immortal Foes. Of course, they've got my own little spin, and whilst we're living in the Australian internet conditions, if I drop out, just let me know. We'll see what happens. The first antagonists mentioned are the Akamata. Sorry. The Amkata. They are these sorts of things. Chimeric abominations. They are creatures. Let's get my notes over here. They are creatures that greedily consume Sechem. Sechem is life and life force. Sechem is what makes all things connected. Sechem is found in humans, in the blood, in other creatures. It is life force. If you're used to mage, this is the sort of stuff that you would be used to working with as a thesis, although mage and mummy interacts in interesting ways. Now, because the Amkhata or the Amkhat consumes Sechem, and they need Sechem to survive, and they are created when, say, a person raids a mummy's tomb, and all of a sudden they break one of the canopic jars, or they shatter a sacred relic. The Sechem that is bound within them, that provides it with its magical power, is released. Because of its release, that's when the Amkhata form. They form to take hold, to eat, and to consume of this life force. If you're used to Promethean, you can consider them a bit like the firestorms that form. They are a natural force that happens when life finds a way. Now, they will... Hello, little Lily. I have a little cat on my lap. Need to boost that. Ba-ba-da-ba-da. Here we go. Unfortunately, we miss out on some of the beauty of this template because different camera aspect ratios. But here we are. So the Amkhat eat any deposited Sechem around them, and when it's all gone, they get punted straight through into Twilight. Twilight is not a state. It is not a layer of reality. It's not like the underworld. It's not like the hedge. It's not like the spirit world. It's not like the dreaming roads. Twilight is a state of existence, an ephemeral state of existence. Because of that, anything in Twilight gets envious, it gets hungry, it wants to be around the living things. However, they can't, because just like a gas cannot be a solid of its own volition, they cannot necessarily enter into the physical space of their own volition. So, the Amkhat, or the Amkhata, when they eat things that have Sechem, they are trying to maintain this state of being alive. They are occasionally summoned to be used as weapons because they just disappear, right? Sorcerers can summon one of these, and we'll get onto sorcerers later. And all of a sudden, these Amkhat have means to exist, and the sorcerers have means to devastate their opponents. Of course, it doesn't always go like that. It doesn't always work. And sometimes the Amkhat turn, come after the sorcerers with all of this delightful life force. And if they do that, they'll make a nest. A nest is is what it sounds like, of course, where Sechem can grow, where it can fester, where it can kind of pool like a loci in Werewolf. When this happens, Sibaris, the kind of disquiet that mummies cause, spreads around them and spins out, causing horrible things to happen in the area. Amkatha are great physical threats for your party, for your merits of Arisen or for cultists, anything. They are ideal physical foes because they don't have to be smart, they don't have to be creative, they just have to fight to stay alive. And that is a powerful thing in any system. The fight to maintain life, the fight to be a living thing, is what drives them. You know, if we're depressed, maybe we don't have that, but for these things, they want to be alive. They want to have a body. And will you give that to them? Will you enable that? That is the question. Another point that you can use them for is if the merit you're with, the mummies that you're with, continually kind of abuse their vessels, continually manipulate and draw out. Just trying to get better lighting. Let's see if this works. Ha ha. Ha ha. Works. Mummies can draw Sechem from vessels, from relics, and continue to further their lifespan. If you have a particularly cannibalistic set of mummies, having these physical threats to come along and show what the mummies could be, show how they are like leeches, like they're vampires, like they're just reaping this whirlwind of Sechem. It can be a very poetic antagonist. On one hand, we as mummies are surviving because of what we consume. We're surviving because of who we are. And part of that is consuming Sechem. However, we're no better than those chimeric abominations. We're no better than vampires. Ugh. We're no better than changelings. We're leeches. That can be a fun thing to show in this moment. and a fun thing that as a storyteller you can play with and feed into the situation. The next creatures, which should be reasonably familiar to everyone, are ghosts and shades. The Mummy book divides these two reasonably sensibly. They're both the essence of a dead person. They are memory manifest. Ghosts are bound to the earth by their anchors, by memories of trauma or unfinished work. If you're familiar with Geist, you're more than familiar with ghosts. Problem is, ghosts get swept into the underworld. Their memories decay, their virtues and their vices in particular take hold of them and drag them away. Shades, on the other hand, are bloodthirsty, Twilight-bound entities that seek to drain Sechem from mummies. Shades are, in many ways, very mummy-specific vampires. They are devastated by sunlight. They are bound in twilight. Once again, the state of twilight. They can manifest, but it takes particular power to do so. And they hunt for more and more Sechem, using their noumena, using their powers to steal it from their prey and to rank up. Ghosts can only rank up, as per the books, a few ways. One of the most common ways is going into the underworld and drinking from one of the rivers. In doing so, they can become Geists by binding themselves to a mortal, or they can, boost their rank, or have their rank boosted by high-level death mages, that sort of thing. Certainly, this is they are dangerous to mummies. Mummies can't necessarily see into Twilight. Mummies are powerful entities, but what these creatures do is they play with memory. Memory is this key theme that we'll keep coming back to. Ghosts remember how they died. They remember who they were before they died. And as a mummy grows in memory, maybe more ghosts are drawn to them that display qualities of their mortal life back in Irem. Or maybe these ghosts reveal this shame and this guilt as the mummy slowly remembers who they were, what they did, and what the rite of return, this mystical ancient rite given by the Shan Yatal, did. This huge sacrifice that the Shan Yatal did. And maybe shades and ghosts can be used to show that, to ask the question, was it worth it? And maybe they'll answer. But it's unlikely. These... Oh. I have a kitten who is desperate for attention. Give me a sec. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this fluffy thing. Absolutely desperate. Aren't you? Screw me, baby. Okay. That's ghosts. No, Lily doesn't care if I'm working. That's ghosts. Ghosts are fun antagonists that realistically should occur in every Chronicle of Darkness game. They're common, they're there, they have very poignant stories. In comparison, Shades should probably be a bit rarer, because they are these Twilight vampires. They are these seekers of life. Oh, this is better, isn't it, kitten? And they want to eat the players. If they get their hands on the player and they manage to drain all the second from them, the mummy descends. And if they keep doing that, if they keep draining second, eventually the mummy passes out. And Shades feast on that, and it's beautiful for them. Playing with that sort of theme may help in a game. Now, the next image we're going to throw up for the Shuan Chesen is a little bit gory, but so if you don't like gore, maybe just switch to a different monitor. It won't be up for long. But here we have one of what I believe should be the principal antagonists of Mummy, the Shuan Chesen. These are the Dread Mummies. They are those who remember. They are the servants of Amut, the all-devouring. They are agents of entropy. In this image, you can, the one on, I think it's screen right. I don't know how this, yes, screen right is one of these Shuan Chesen. And the two on the left are Amchata. They are these chimeric amalgamations. The Shuan Chesen, sorry, are really where the horror of Mummy starts to become played. There is always the existential horror of losing Sechem, losing life force, and slowly entering a descent, becoming weaker and weaker, entering old age. However, you also gain memory. This other power stat that generates more and more story and more connection. What the Shuan Kasen represent is entropy. They serve a single judge, Amut, which is the final consumption, the final devastation. Everything in the world dies. And these are the agents of that death. Ah, oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that magnificent? You could join them in creating that destruction. Wouldn't that be good for you? Wouldn't you enjoy that? Obviously, the Shuan Hesen are dangerous entities. They are, in many ways, what a mummy could be. They are Carthians. If you're used to vampire, these are the Carthians. Except Carthians have a cost-benefit analysis always going on with their experiments. These do not. They are all about breaking and destroying things. They are the toxic change, whereas your playgroup, your Arisen, should be the beneficial change. Mummy manages to carry this hope and this discovery in a way that a lot of other games don't. A lot of other Splatlines just don't. What Mummy does is bring this hopeful element to the fore in you are creating a better world, or at least a world you believe to be better. The Shuan Chesen are there to destroy it, to corrupt it, to remove it. because of this, they have different burdens. These were once mummies, but they serve a different judge. They have changed, so their burdens reflect that. You gain the Avenger, one who is there to strike back, to regain what was lost, what the Arisen took. You have the Destroyers, who are just there to do as their name says, destroy everything. That plan that you had to build a new center for unemployment, that was actually going to help people and generate more life, that was going to do good work. Now the Destroyer came through, obliterated it. It's gone now. You don't get that. Or there is the third Avenger. I will have my vengeance against you. Destroyer, I will ruin what you have built. Zealot, you know it's going to fail anyway. You know it's going to break. Why keep going? Why bother? The Shuankasen mummies gone wrong. They're a symbol of failed communication, of lost causes, of toxic, traumatic behaviours that are condoned. They may have been abandoned by their merits. They may have been driven mad by the guilt of their creation, burdened by their own failures in the service of the judges. They have a twisted sechem, a twisted life, and full memories of everything they were and everything they could be and how they were made to feel and how they failed. They are a tragedy, a walking, talking tragedy. I believe the best way to use these guys is to be this dark mirror to the Arisen. Ideally, an antagonist of any story. Sorry, ideally they would be the key antagonists of your mummy story. These are the people that should be coming up, your merit should be coming up against the most, as the Bane mummies, as they're called, the Xuan Kesen, the Bane mummies, seek to undo everything they can. They are bloody revolutionaries of whatever persuasion. They are anarchistic libertarians without any cause except to bring people to accept that they will fail, just like they did, just like the judges did. Everything dies, and you're part of everything. Which is fun. I think we can all agree that we want to maintain that sort of healthy work-life relationship, right? I believe that that the Bane mummies should be used as a social or organizational threat to the Arisen. Whatever work your player group does, these guys undo. Whatever cult that your player group builds up, these guys are working to kill them or to corrupt them or to feed in this twisted sechem. They are there to harm the reputation of the players. More than anything, they're a threat to a mummy's burden, because if you exist to avenge, there has to be a reason, and they remember the reason. If you seek to destroy, there has to be a reason, and they remember the reason. In many ways, if you're familiar with Werewolf the Forsaken, and you're familiar with the Pure, these guys play a lot like the Fire Touched of the Pure tribes. They are there to bring the truth to the mummy's experience, to the player's experience, that they are being lied to, they are being mistreated, and they are victims of a colonial imperial power that just wanted their bodies, just wanted their resource. These guys remember. Doesn't mean they tell the truth, but they remember the failure of the judges. The judges. Now, I'll freely admit I didn't read as much into the judges as antagonists because the reason that they're antagonistic is pretty simple. The judges are guardians of the afterlife. They are masters of Duat. There are 42 of them mentioned in the Mummy book, each one with its own lore, each one with its own goal, often with overlapping goals, each one with its own requirements. Whatever it is, each the goal of one judge may differ from another judge. But mummies are still judged by all. Right? The judges are a problem for the mummy. Because of that, it's very easy to create a different judge. In the book, 42 judges are mentioned. 7 are named and listed with their decrees. So if one of them gets into an argument with another one and causes your mummy to fail, well, looks like you've got judgment coming for you. This is where if you like playing Lancia Sanctum, or if you like playing with themes of judgment and destruction, this really comes to the fore, as the judges do that. They are this constant existential checkbox of, well, did you do your homework? No. Time to get smacked. That's kind of all they are. There are deep philosophical things you can play around with it. There are ideas that you can play with it, but really, they're, at the end of the day, if you fail at one of their measures and they consider it heinous enough, if you're not judged enough in life, then this is the game for you. Wow. Are you feeling okay? You doing good? But there is kind of truth to that. If you've got some sort of, if you enjoy that sort of play, using the judges as a main antagonist is really solid. However, judges can just as much be a positive force in the lives of the awakened. Oh, sorry, the arisen. Judges, it just depends on how you want to use the word judge, right? They can bring truth to your life, or they can punish you for your failure. Just depends. But the most important thing is these guys aren't good. They aren't nice, they aren't kind, they are there to do a job. And they're there to make you do your job. Which is fun. We love that. Now, is this making sense, chat? Am I crafting this brilliant story for you? I don't have any good images for this next portion. But passes the vibe check. Thanks. Thanks. I am there to pass your vibes. That's... We said words without thinking about them. When I read this, one of my favourite foes, antagonists, entities related to mummies are the immortals. If you're used to first edition, you'll be familiar with the immortals. book, and these are ports over to the second edition framework in many ways. Immortals, when compared to mummies, are fantastic. Mummies are dragged down to Duat by the Sothic cycle, this cycle of 1,400 and something years that draws them into the back away from life. They have a job to do, the mummies, and they will get that job done. An immortal is a person avoiding death that doesn't have that problem. Great. And they are drawn to mummies. Mummies have special materials, they're relics that possess Sekhem, and each immortal has their own ritual that allows them to prolong their life. So maybe this immortal joins you, becomes your friend. Maybe they become your foe. Whatever they are there and they are drawn to you. Suck it up, princess. Basically the way they work. Like I said, if you're used to the Immortals book, you'll be used to some of these Immortals mentioned here. First off, we have the Blood Bathers. Those who drain Sekhem through blood and bathe in them, like Catherine of Aragon, I believe. They are semi-vampiric creatures. They are fantastic. As antagonists, they are fantastic as here's a good example. Bit lewd, but whatever. She is bathing in the blood of this individual as her butler slices his throat. What a beautiful, beautiful image. Bloodbathers are fun. They are there to live life and to gain Sekhem from the living. In doing so, they maintain themselves. They keep going. Body thieves are the next ones. They leap from shell to shell, body to body, preserving their soul, preserving their identity for years after years. Cool idea. Very fun idea if you have a long-term game, multiple arcs maybe, where you're jumping across time and each time you're meeting the same body thief, different body, and they're there to help you. The next one are Eternals. We don't have any images for them yet, but they are basically the liches of C of D. Their life is tied to a relic, and if you destroy the relic, you destroy the lich. They maintain a single body, they keep going for as long as they can with this one relic that they pass down generation after generation. These are your Voldemorts, this is Vecna. These guys are cool. Then there are the Reborn, or Reborn, whatever you want to call them, that live and die and live again, witness me, as they are the reincarnated heroes and masters of old. They're pretty rad. I really like Immortals. I think they're cool. In writing my notes, they are one of the things that took up the most thought time. Each one has its own lore and systems and suggestions, and I'm not going to get into all of those because I believe the best use of the Immortals are what they are. Rivals. Where we see the Shuang Khesen are directly antagonistic, the judges are corrupt, the dead are a memory, and the Ahmata Amkhata are violent hunger. The immortals are rivals. They represent what the Arisen could have been. They represent what the Arisen do. They represent who the Arisen are in different ways. And they can work with mummies. An immortal may be a wise seneschal whilst the mummy drifts in and out of Duat, looking after the cult, adhering to orders. But really it's the immortal that the cult respects as their leader. It's the immortal that put in the time and the effort. And sure, maybe every so often we leapfrog over to another individual. That's fine. But it's the immortal that stayed with us whilst you slept. All of a sudden we have this internal story going on. The immortal may be a rival in finding relics. As the mummy's merit collects more and more relics, the immortal sneaks in every so often and pinches one. Just don't worry about it. Immortals do cool things. They are rivals. They are drivers of internal conflict within a merit. They are cultivators of ideas that often fall out of line with judges' wishes. They are just cool entities to play with. But they also have this vested interest in the Arisen. Sure, violent conflict may happen in your game. But more often than not, if your players are clever about it, they will form an alliance with an immortal against a bigger threat. Question is, what's the cost? What do you have to give up for peace? We're moving on to our last antagonist from the book, and if you guys in chat have any questions about how maybe I would run antagonists from different game lines or something, chuck them in, I'll get around to them. I'll be able to think about them now, in this little moment. Alrighty. The next set are mortal sorcerers. Here we have some beautiful artwork of a sorcerer's cult gathering together to cast a spell using what I assume to be the body of a mummy, smashing it up to draw out Sekhem. Sorcerers are a post-Irem, so they are a memory of what could have been facsimile of the Xian Yatao. They use rituals, they obsessively gather information, they manipulate Sekhem, they hunt for magic, they explore, and they violate tombs as they seek more power. Sorcerers are transgressive exiles. They train apprentices, and yet these apprentices eventually cause feuds with them. They are masters of magic and Sekhem, and they believe they are no one's inferior, and they do not suffer anyone who considers them as such. Sorcerers are incredibly valuable to mummies for a number of reasons. Sorcerers can lead rituals, and they can be treated as a prized pet that, well done, you did a very clever thing, or a favourite niece or nephew or something like that, given more and more ancient knowledge for doing a good job. They may be like the immortals and be working towards something else and taking relics and thieving the Sekhem from them. They may, work together, breaking the life web, the pattern of fate and life that maps everything out. They shatter that with magic. They harm others. They break the powers of the mummy, or they worship the mummy as a master. Who knows? Whatever it is, for the sorcerers, a mummy is just as much battery as it is lord. Fundamentally, sorcerers are great secondary characters. Either within cults or as antagonists, they aren't masters of everything, but they are very useful to the mummy, and they know what they want. So sorcerers can be flexible in what you want to use them for. Want a group of people to pillage the mummy's relics, or to be in charge of a raid on a tomb, and then they improve the relics in some way, they add more magic to them? Use sorcerers. Playing a game heavy with memory, and you want something that resembles a group of Shan Yatao until a mummy comes face to face with them, and then they realize, oh no, you're just liars, you're charlatans. I remember who you were. I remember what you could have been. Wow. Use sorcerers for that. Don't use awakening mages, use these sorcerers. Awakening magic doesn't work properly on mummies. Use these sorcerers instead. Use them for what they are. They are flexible. They are human. They exist to serve their own ends. And if the mummy works towards those ends, absolutely we're going to play ball. We're going to have a great time. You're our friend. We're your friend. Let's do this. That ain't always going to be the case. And when the mummy goes to sleep, what happens when a sorcerer is left with all of those relics, all of those people? What are they going to do? Who knows? Those are the principal enemies and antagonists you would come up against in Mummy the Curse. Each one plays with memory, each one plays with life, each one reflects something about Irem, or reflects something about who the mummy is and what the mummy could be. So in our last 10 minutes or so before I flick us on to joining the Critical Role stream, what do you guys think? Is there anything particularly interesting you find about these antagonists? Is there anything particularly interesting you find about how mummies work? Is there anything that you're curious about in the lore that I can bring up next episode in a fortnight's time? Chuck it into chat. And once I grab a mouthful of water, we'll chat for a little bit. Yeah, it's... Mummy is a hard splat to... not be dismissive of, I think. Particularly if you're used to other splats. Tui, I think the writers did a lot of really cool stuff. One of them being letting me talk about it. But also, for Tui, one of the big problems at first glance with Mummy is if you're used to playing a heavily mechanical game, you actually lose mechanical power over time. As Sekhem depletes, all that sort of stuff, you slowly lose power. That doesn't feel good, right? that doesn't make people go, oh yeah, mummy, it's great, it's fantastic, because you lose power. Where mummy makes up for that is in creative application of power, is in its time jumpy nature, and is in what it actually is talking about. It's a very inspirational splat, I think. Very laden with uh, very modern ideas as well. You know, the Eremites Empire was not a good empire, much like all empires in our past as humans. Living in Australia, we deal with memory. We deal with the memory of the British Empire. In Tasmania, we deal with the memory of genocide as one of the most brutal and efficient genocides, and that has taken place. Whilst there are many Palawa Aboriginal people still living, and their culture is being rebuilt. Damn, it's not easy. We're living with that memory, and that, I think, is where Mummy really stands on its own. Stands on its 2 feet and says with its whole chest, we're trying to make the world a better place, but damn it, we're not good people. We want to be, we really want to be, but we're not. And that sucks. There is a lot of cool you can do with this story. And it's not just a reconstruction of Empire. It's a how do we live with our power and influence waning whilst trying to make a better world. Mummy is very hopeful. I read it as. It's probably just as hopeful as Promethean. Um, and that's really nice. That's really nice. Alright. If there is new thing else, I'm going to start wrapping us up. I'm going to prep our next game in the schedule. Or our next show in the schedule. Oh, gosh. It's been a week, gang. It really has been a week. The... Oh dear. There's been a cancellation. Scary. Yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. You should be able to rewatch it on the Onyx Path YouTube channel, where I highly recommend you go. Show a bit of love, give this a share. In the next week, we're going to be doing some homebrew stuff. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I'm not sure how we're going to go with this. We may just end up building a world, a city for people to play around with. But yeah, I hope you guys have all enjoyed this, and as we jump to other things, better things through the day, may Irem go with you and may you remember well.